So basically, we're on week 3. I can't believe it. So Chan and Maurice, you guys both did your presentations. So I want to work through and do assignment number 2. The whole idea of this activity is at the end, you'll know how to use a set of pair of virtual machines. It's just to kind of like reinforce content that you're learning in your test out product. And also, there is a hands-on midterm where I'm going to have you use a pair of these Windows 10 virtual machines to do a midterm. Now, in this class, honestly, my pre-configured machines are nothing special. You can make them on your own if you want to, just doing a quick Windows 10 install. When you get into more in our server courses, that's when our pre-configured VMs matter more. But we're going to do this with my pre-configured VMs. And I wrote this for both online and face-to-face students. Yes? Okay, let's see here. Let me pause it. So, this assignment was written for face-to-face and online students, which is good. That means if you want to do it at home, you can. So it's not just reliant on stuff in the classroom. And I'll just look at these sections. So the idea is you come in, you do one of these sections. We'll do a couple of them. And let's just start with, let's see here. Let's just kind of run through the sections. Let's take a look at it. So section 1. Okay, so if you're working at home, you need to get my pre-configured virtual machines. And for this class, there's just 2 of them. And granted, you're not going to have to do this in class today because you already have your pre-configured VMs downloaded. But I'm just going to kind of show you what it looks like. So, and also you'd have to install VMware Workstation at home. So I do have a screencast on that, but I already have VMware Workstation installed in here. And it's also worth noting that even if you want to work on some of this stuff outside of class, we do have, and I know I mentioned this the first week, but it's hard to remember all the stuff at the beginning of semester. But we do have computers on all 4 campuses in our academic support centers with our pre-configured VMs loaded on it. Okay, so a VM just stands for virtual machine. I should probably back up a little bit. Essentially, it's just a way that it's a technology that allows you to run an operating system already on a computer that has an operating system. So if you want to run 3 copies of Linux and 1 copy of the Mac OS on a computer, you can do that all while you're running your. So it's kind of a cool tool. But if you look on my website under Lab and Office Hours, I have a couple links here that basically they run you through when you go to an academic support center, how to launch VMware Workstation, where you're going to find the VM. So basically in an academic support center, they're saying go to the D drive, and you should see an ITNET-110 folder, and in the ITNET-110 folder, you're going to see these 3 subfolders which have our VMs in it. All right. The bottom 2, Client 1 and Client 2, have the actual virtual machine files in it, and the one above it, the ISOs folder. We've talked about ISOs briefly, but that basically has the Windows 10 DVD in it. All right. So. And then this just runs through how to launch them, kind of part of assignment number 1, and how to use them. So for now, the takeaway is if you want to go to an academic support center to mess around with VMware Workstation, you can. There's one in every campus, and I think I have in this one of the documents I have the room numbers and actually a little like diagram in some of them where they're located. Good? So we're all on the same page? You want to work outside of class, you can do it on any campus. Good. All right. Incidentally, you're good. If you're an online student and you're listening, if you want to go just to any academic support center, you can copy our VMs off of that. Yeah?
Yeah, I was wondering, can you compress the VMware into a zip or something? So that way if people go in the lab, they could download easier, because with the client 1 and 2 or so, all the data on there is 9 gigabytes, so it's take a long time to load, but versus the compressed file, which is maybe 4 gigabytes.
Yeah, you're saying, yeah, if you do a download, it's actually,
if you download from the Google Drive, then it will be the 4 gigabytes because you have it as
yeah. And if I go back, if I look at, so That's coming up in here. I mean, you can go to my Google Drive. I have a shared folder, and you can download our VMs off of that.
But I did this. That's why it take less amount of time and space, you know, versus. You know,
I don't think they're going to want to keep a zip file on the academic supports, because the part of it is once you get them, you're going to spend more time unzipping it than if you just would have waited for it to copy.
Yeah, to me, I just feel like when you unzip it yourself, you just unzip it or do it yourself, versus when you try to download 9 gigabyte from the system to your flash drive. It takes
Right.
time.
Well, one of the things to remember, if you are copying stuff to your flash drive, you have these 9 gigabyte files. So, I mean, so far the takeaway is, holy smokes, these VMs can get big, right? I mean, if each Windows 10 machine is 10 gigabytes, that's a lot of space. Probably the most critical thing is on most computers, just make sure you're plugged into the USB 3.0 port, the ones that are blue. Like some of the computers in here, the bottom two are USB 3.0, and then the ones above it are USB 2.0. So your computers all have 4 USB ports on it. Make sure you're on the fast one when you're copying, the blue ones. So that may have affected it. Also, I mean, some flash drives are just USB 2.0, which can be painfully slow, and that may, I don't know what your status was. So.
And I think if you have a flash drive that has a format of FAT,
Yeah.
which you can download the 9 gigabyte because the most you can fit is a 4 gigabyte.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is something that we kind of run into a lot. And you mentioned it in your presentation. You said our D drives for NTFS, but
Right.
most times when you get flash drives, you can have either FAT32, NTFS, or exFAT. And exFAT was kind of was designed for removable media. So if you have a flash drive, and if you're copying it and it says file too large, you're going to have to reformat your flash drive. They talk about that in chapter 3 or 2 in your test stuff, but basically you're going to have to pick one of these two, NTFS or exFAT, to reformat your flash drive. So once a semester I have a student that says, Pat, I can't copy the files, they're too big. It's always because it's FAT32. Because you're right, the maximum file size is 4 gigabytes, and we have files that are upwards of 9 gigabytes.
Mhm.
What's the difference? Anybody know what's the difference between NTFS and exFAT? Like, why would you pick one over the other? As long as we're sitting here talking about.
The extent is for, like, say, flash drive, but.
Yeah, but it actually, and we're going to go over formatting and stuff. So if some of this you're like, I know what you're talking about, Pat, and don't worry about it. So yeah.
I know NTF we use more for the operating system, like I said, the window files, because it can hold the most storage and stuff.
I mean, we see that that NTFS is used really actually primarily with Windows. Also, one of the things I was getting at is or thinking about at least, is that Windows can read and write NTFS perfectly, but if you have a Mac or even like another kind of OS besides Windows, a lot of them can't write to NTFS unless you add extra software. So exFAT kind of works with everything. All right, that's a bit. And you're right. This can hold. For the most part, I always just format my flash drives exFAT, and this kind of works everywhere then. So, and then real quick, if I just to try to describe formatting, like this thing is covered in other classes too. Basically, when you have a blank drive, you have to decide how information is going to be stored on it, like what format. NTFS is a way of storing it. FAT32 is a way of storing it. exFAT, there's like a half dozen we can list out here. There's pros and cons to all of them, but typically on a Windows machine, everything is NTFS internally, and then the USB drives, there's some variation. You have to figure out what you want. This is just old. You don't ever, if you have one like this, just reformat it and pick one of these two. All right. Good. All right, so I'm on assignment number 1, and in theory, I've already installed VMware Workstation at home. Go to my website and check out how to use a pre-configured VMs. I'll talk about that today. The following walks you through how to obtain our pre-configured VMs. Might as well just check it out. Okay. I think the easiest thing to do is stop by a computer lab, like a classroom or academic support center. Just plug your flash drive in and copy it. All right? And again, it's all on the D drive. So if I look on my physical machine here, if you guys look on your physical machines in class right now, there's a D drive in there, and there's a folder called ITNET Images, Lab Files, ITNET-110. This is the one you want right here. If I right click and do a properties on it, it's 20 gigabytes. Okay, so it doesn't seem big to me because I've seen some VMs get upwards of 50 gigabytes just by themselves, a single VM. Like when I had on my Mac for the longest time, I just had a Windows 10 virtual machine on my desktop. So if I ever need to do something in Windows, I would just, I wouldn't reboot my Mac and I would just start the VM up, and that thing just kept growing and growing and growing, and so anyways, I stopped using it. It took too much space up. But so far we know that on your machines, the D drive has your ITNET-110 virtual machines on it. And the 3 subfolders are the ISOs, which we've mentioned, and the 2 clients. If I look at the ISOs folder, there's just a single file in there. And this is your Windows 10 DVD. All right, so basically someone took a Windows 10 DVD, and there's a format called an ISO form. Who's used ISO files before? Yeah, like a third of you maybe. It's just basically a what? A virtual CD. You can make a virtual CD out of it. I always think of it like most people know what zip files are. So it's kind of like it's a format of taking an entire data structure on a DVD or something and putting it into a single file. But it remembers, it can rebuild all that file structure and folder structure if you have to. So this is the easiest way for me to give someone a DVD, because I just give them the ISO file. Okay? So good. All right. So I can close this out. And as far as getting the VMs go, you can go to Academic Support Center, or I have this thing, download steps for ITNET-110. This is for if you're at home. Again, it doesn't really affect you guys because you're all here. Just bring your flash drive to class with you sometime. But if I do look in the Google Drive folder here, I have the Windows client 1 and 2. Each one of those folders has been zipped up into a single zip file, and they're about 4 gigabytes in size, like you were saying. So basically, we just took this folder here, Windows 10 Client 1, zipped it up, and out popped the zip file here. Good? Make sense? Good? Yeah.
You don't have a Mac, just Windows?
Just Windows. To be legal, if you want to run a Mac VM, you have to be running it on a Mac computer. And I've never had the need to build a Mac VM, but that's the way you do it. I've heard of people, there are ways of getting a Mac VM to run on a Windows computer, but I've never messed around with it. So. All right.
Off the topic question, does Mac have like you work for a corporation, does Mac have server versions and stuff if a company is full of Macs?
They do. I mean, there is but for the most part, everything is still Windows based. Yeah. Microsoft kind of got that market. And I haven't done anything with Mac really just beyond the client operating system, because it's by and large, you talk to employers, you get the clients to worry about, and then your servers are typically always Windows based. All right, so anyways, you can download the VMs, and that's it. So at this point, you're sitting in class in here, and you're going to work on assignment number 1 a little bit. You're going to, enough to go to your D drives. To go to the ITNET-110 folder, and that's kind of where you're going to start. So I'm going to just keep marching along through assignment number 1 now. And the cool thing is, if you're at home, all of you, at least in class, know where to copy the VMs from, and you can go create your own environments at home. And this is it. So now I'm just going to start both my virtual machines up, and you'll do that in a second. And the first step says reset both machines to the first snapshot and start them up. So let me just try that real quick. And again, I thought if I walk through it first, that way when you guys do it, it'll go quick. So, I guess you can basically I've browsed into my ITNET 110, then into the Windows 10 Client 1 subfolder. And the file I want to run is, I don't know how to describe it. I think it's called a virtual machine configuration file, but it's got it looks like 3 little pieces of paper in front. I don't know if you can see it or not. It's kind of this is the one way of starting my VM. So I double click it. It says, what do you want to use? I want to use VMware Workstation to open it up. Don't use VMware Player. That's kind of like the stripped down version of VMware Workstation. And if you're a Mac, by the way, VMware Fusion is a product that you use on your Macs. And it is pretty cool. Our VMs, they work in both Fusion and in Workstation. So, all right. So I double clicked it. Now here's the snapshot thing. Let me just go to VM snapshots. I'm going to go to the snapshot manager. This is pretty unexciting for this class. I have one snapshot, and it basically says Windows setup complete. All right. So we made a Windows 10 VM. We set it up, and we took a snapshot. So the beauty is now I'm just going to double click it to go there, or click it and hit go to. Yes. And my Windows 10 VM has 4 gigabytes of RAM assigned to it. I can change it if I want to. I can run mine with 16 gigabytes. We have plenty of RAM in this computer. And start it up. What do I answer here? Who's been messing around? Did I answer I moved it or I copied it? I moved it. Yep. All right. It is kind of cool here. Your VM actually can connect to a USB device. It can't share it. So like my microphone's a USB device right now, so I wouldn't want to connect to it. But like, if you know, like a flash drive that you wanted to get some files into your VM, you could just connect your USB to that VM. I was messing around like with this game controller thing I'm building, so I was gonna on my Mac. I was just gonna connect this external controller to my Windows 10 VM, so I can kind of like mess around with it that way. So it's pretty neat. So my Windows 10 VM is started. I have to send it a Control-Alt-Delete. So to do that, I can't do Control-Alt-Delete on my desktop system. It doesn't work. I actually have to tell VMware Workstation to, and we talked about this before, send a Control-Delete there. Password 01. Password 01, just like we have in class here. Okay, so my Windows 10 client is running. The other way opening a VM is just to do a file open, like a Word document. There we go. File open. I'm opening that virtual machine config file again. All right. So the instructions in the assignment number 2, they basically tell you guys to reset both machines to the first snapshot. The reason we do that is if another student was on your virtual machine messing around with it, when you take it back to the first snapshot, all the changes are gone. So just to kind of like, it's a way of having a known starting point, all right? So both of your Windows 10 virtual machines are the way we designed it at this point. Let's see here, the next step of the lab is. I can start closing some of these files out and getting too many open. All right. I moved it. Put the password in here again, password 01. Everything you need to know is in the document. Okay, at the very end it says now go to section 5. So at this point, if you did section 1, you've got 2 Windows VMs running. If you did section 2, you've got 2 Windows VMs running. It doesn't matter which section you do. Section 3, I'm not going to cover that now, but basically if you don't want to download 4 gigabytes or 8 gigabytes, you can just download the ISO file and make your own Windows 10 VMs. It's pretty quick. So, and I have a video on that. If you want to just just do a fresh install. But I don't want to go over that now. And section 4 is something called NetLab. I was going to have Steve talk about that today. We have a server that's running, several servers, and they just basically host virtual machines that you can connect to with a web browser. The problem is on Friday, one or two of the machines they got a power issue, and it blew the power supplies on the servers. So they're in the middle of working on those now, and they're not sure if they lost all the, who knows. So Steve was pretty stressed out on Friday when I emailed them. So we're gonna skip section 4, but that might be an option later in the semester, is just to, instead of running workstation at home on your computer, if it's not powerful enough, you might be able to use NetLab to basically remote desktop into a machine. Don't think of it that way. All right, section 5. Determine the IP address of, okay, and these activities here, there's nothing special about these activities. I just wanted you to mess around with the virtual machines. All right? That's the whole point of assignment number 1. So when I wrote it, I'm like, okay, what can they do? First, figure out the IP address. Okay. And I gave you a link on how to figure it out if you don't know how to do that. My virtual machine window was kind of off my desktop, so I'm just hitting Fit Guest now to rescale it. So I'm opening a. There's a whole bunch of ways I could do your way, right? I guess I could use that. MS Info 32. And where did you say? Was it under?
Under network, hardware, leak, and components, and it'll be network.
All right, under components, network. Okay.
Expand it, yep.
All right, so my machine's IP address is 192.168.100.20. All right, so I could do it that way. I could do it the old school way and just go to command prompt and type in IP config. 192.168.100.20. All right, same thing. So I have my IP address. Well, I'll remember that. And then you're supposed to do it on the other machine also. Let me kind of rescale the window. There we go. View Fit Guest now. All right. IP config. All right. Okay, now I know the IP addresses of my two machines, 100.10 and 100.20, 192.168.100.10, 100.20. I want you to turn off the firewalls on both machines. What's a firewall do?
Block incoming or outgoing traffic.
Yeah, so why would I want to block incoming traffic on my computer? Yeah, viruses and stuff like that. I had a web server on campus once for a while, and the firewall was off, and it got, there was some big, it got infected, and the IT had to contact me, and basically once I was infected, then my server was going out and infecting other machines in the school, and it's a long time ago. It's before I knew better. But anyways, the problem is sometimes you want to allow certain traffic to come into a computer, like this ping. What the ping command does is it basically, it's like if I'm talking to someone, if I just, if I said, Joshua, can you hear me? It's kind of like I'm pinging you. And then if you hear me, say, yeah, Pat, I can hear you. So that's kind of what a ping does. So it's a way of having one machine ask another machine, can I hear you? So on our virtual machines here, I'm just going to, on one machine, type in ping, 192.168, 100.20. I'm on the 100.10 machine, so I'm going to go to 100.20. Okay, I'm getting some response back. Done. If you guys take the Cisco classes here or Network Plus class, you go over the same thing. So right now what I know is, I know that I have two computers, two Windows 10 machines. I know how to log into them, and I know that they can basically see each other. They can ping each other back and forth. All right? In my lab, back under assignment number 1, I have you doing things like turning off the firewall. Why? Just to give you something to do. All right. I also threw in there, I think I did this on Friday, is I wanted to show you, if you want to, you can turn firewalls on and off. Instead of going through the GUI, you can do it through PowerShell. So I'll just do that real quick because that's more exciting. And I'm just going to take this command here and copy it. Control C. And let me go to my virtual machine. So on this machine here, I'm gonna launch something called PowerShell. And again, more on this later. This is just an intro messing around. So here's a PowerShell app. Here's a trick if you don't know it. I want to do some administrative stuff, one of them PowerShell, so I have to have administrative privileges. So before instead of just clicking on it and running it, I'm going to right click on it and run it as an administrator. All right? Again, more on this later in the semester, but so now I'm running PowerShell as an administrator, and I'm going to take the command that I copied and I'll just paste it in here. So I'm going to set the firewall, and I'm going to set it to false. You know what? Let me make it true. Let's do this. Set a false. Let me turn the firewall on. True. All right? So right now my firewall is turned on. So if I go back to client 1, and if I go back and try to ping it, is it going to work? No. Firewall's on. So I try to run it. It's not working. Timed out, timed out, timed out. So I can come back here and I can rerun it again with a false. Firewall is turned off. And all of a sudden, the very last ping worked. I don't know if you can see. It's kind of hard. It's a pretty small font, but when I finally got it, the last ping works. So when I run the ping command, it sends 5 pings out. You know, Joshua, can you hear me? Joshua, can you hear me? Joshua, can you hear me? The last one, you finally said, yes, I can hear you, Fader. Stop talking. So, anyways, that's the lab. And then when you're done, oh, here, I'll show you. This is what do I have here. If you're having problems with ping, check your firewalls are turned off. Oh, here. So now we're going to talk a little bit about VMware. Two things in VMware that you need to know. First, our pre-configured machines are set up so this won't be an issue. But if you build your own at home, as an example, you have to realize that a virtual machine. If I go under Settings here, VMware Workstation lets me choose how the network card is going to interface with the outside world on my virtual machine. Okay? So right now it says host only, which basically means it can only talk to the other virtual machines and talk to my physical computer. That's it. It can't get on the internet. The problem is if you're messing around and if you set one machine to like host only and the other one to NAT, and I don't want to get sidetracked too much, but if I set it to NAT, it essentially allows my VM to get to the outside world. The problem is, it's kind of like I've got one machine on one network and one machine on a second network, and they can't talk to each other. So now, will my ping work? Not a chance, because even though the firewalls are off, I've got one machine on one network and one on the other. They can't see each other. So for troubleshooting, I always tell students, if it's not working, make sure your firewalls are turned off, and then make sure that both of your virtual machines have the same network setting. Good? So now they can ping each other. Oh, I lied. There we go. Took a bit. Now it's working. So that's the first VMware trick or thing. And then the other thing that I have in here is, again, I'm thinking like even at home here, if you're this virtual machine right now is just kind of its own little world. It's running software. It's pretty much isolated. But when VMware Workstation was installed, it did add some additional drivers to make this virtual machine run better as a virtual machine than not having the drivers installed. One of the things that I can do with it right now is I can drag and drop stuff from my physical computer onto my virtual machine's desktop. So if I have like a text document here, I don't know why, but if I got something I want to get on there, I can drag it in and it copies it onto my desktop. My mouse works pretty cool. My video has been optimized for a virtual machine, so there's a bunch of things that have been done. That was done with this thing called VMware Tools. So my virtual machine right now says update VMware Tools. So that's implying I've already got VMware Tools installed on it, but If I want to update them, I can. All right. So why would you do it? You always update. You always install VMware tools. So if you're building your own virtual machine at home, update VMware tools or install VMware tools. Good. Yeah. Oh. Okay. So that's it. The pinging part's easy. I did throw in the lab another way. I won't demo it, but if you don't want to use ping which is from the 1980s, there is you can use PowerShell instead. Instead of using the ping, you can use a command called test connection to do it. Same effect. And I'll kind of talk about PowerShell throughout the semester in here in classes, because that's just kind of the way we're seeing things going. Maurice, I might just do it later. I think everyone's kind of done here, but I could very easily take my virtual machines and do your RAID demo. Like I could just say, you know what, I want to do a demo here, and I need 5 hard disks. I want to do some different kinds of RAID stuff. It's so easy. You hit the add button, add a hard disk, next, and I'll just be in spouse mode. Next. Don't even read it. Just answer. Just next. Done. Do it a few more times. Hard disk. Next. Done. Hard disk. Because I could add all kinds of stuff, but I want to keep adding hard disks. Next. Done. How many? I think I added 3 hard disks. Is that enough to do RAID 5 if I want to?
With 3, yes.
Yep. I've got 1. So, anyways, at this point right now, I could go into I won't go any further than this, but I could go into disk management. I could see my machines, my new hard disks I added, 1, 2, and 3, and I could do like stuff with RAID, and so that's the beauty of a virtual machine. You can experiment with things, even though my host computer doesn't have 3 disks. The VM has 3 virtual disks now, which is pretty cool.
Can you right click on one of the hard drives?
Yeah, sure.
I don't think you can do RAID 5. Well, yeah, you can.
Well, I don't know. It's grayed out there, so
Right there. You
I don't-
said it's grayed out.
I don't think we can.
I think it said you need Windows Server.
Server for sure would do it.
Yeah.
And here's the deal. I mean, it's cool that Microsoft put this fun stuff in here, like striping and mirroring and RAID 5. At the end of the day, if you're going to do it, you really want an actual physical controller to implement it.
Yeah, that's
I like it for the fact that it just kind of illustrates the concept of these. You're also going to see some really cool thing called storage spaces in Windows 10, which is a neat way of doing storage. I think it's actually more practical for a home user. What it lets you do is it lets you take a bunch of dissimilar disks and just throw them in a pool, and then from that make a massive amount of storage with fault tolerance or not, you choose. But it's kind of cool. So I have a student that sits in this row, and he has 30 terabytes of movies in one of my other classes. So you can't buy a 30. I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating. So and everyone's eyes pop up like, oh, I want to talk. But anyways, with Windows storage spaces, he could buy a bunch of like 4 terabyte drives, stick them together in a pool, and then Windows could see that as one 40 terabyte drive or something like that if you wanted to do that. So interesting. We get sidetracked, but anyways, that's a fun thing.
But what if one of those failed? You lose all.
Well, no, not with storage spaces. That's different than mirror. It depends how you implement it. But if they were striped, like you talked about in your presentation, yeah, if one drive failed, he lost it all. If it was RAID 5, if one drive fails, he hasn't lost anything. If 2 drives fails, he's crying. It's a bad day for him. So, anyway, so your job now is just to kind of run through and do the lab assignment number 2. And when you're done, just call me over when they're pinging. I'll just check you off and I'll update the grade book. Does that make sense? All right.